Having spent some time working on the prerequisites, we will now move into issues directly related to mixing. The most important tool for mixing is the mixer. Most DAWs today include a mixer as a built-in basic feature. These mixers are traditionally modeled after analog hardware mixers and share a lot of the same principles of operation. This guide assumes that you are using a software-based DAW mixer. A mixer consists of a series of channel strips. Each of these channel strips will correspond to one of the sounds in your mix, a virtual instrument, a drum kit, or a recorded vocal performance, for instance. Each channel strip contains a variety of tools to manipulate the sound going into it. The purpose of the mixer is to perform these manipulations and then mix together the sounds coming from each channel strip, creating one audio signal that is the sum of all the separate audio signals. Each channel strip will predominantly feature a level fader, which controls the volume of the sound going into it, usually calibrated in terms of decibels full scale. The level faders are the most basic tool for balancing mixes. The process of adjusting the level faders to achieve the satisfactory balance is called leveling. This seems like a fairly easy thing to do, but it's surprisingly easy to get it wrong. Leveling is easy to get wrong partially because it's easy to overthink it. The more you think about levels, the more your perception becomes distorted, and the more likely you are going to get things wrong. Leveling is pretty easy if you approach it in the right way. In general, if you have a good sound selection, then all of your sounds will be audible in any case, and tiny differences in level should not be that great of importance. So leveling is just a matter of getting everything approximately right without losing perspective. The main guiding principle of leveling is that you should make the most important parts of your music the loudest. If you're writing dance music, you probably want the drums and bass line loudest, or whichever sounds are carrying the main groove. If you're writing pop music, you probably want the vocal line to be the loudest. If you're writing more left of field music, then you need to do some soul searching and figure out which parts are the most important. Perhaps all the parts are equally important, and you should probably level to achieve an even, unbiased presentation. There are two general ways to approach leveling. The first approach is just to level as you go. This approach generally works fine in my experience as long as you don't put too much thought into it, but if at any point you're not feeling satisfied with your levels and you want to completely redo them, there's a simple procedure for doing so. To set your levels from scratch, start by dragging all your faders down to 0, then bring them up one by one, but put some thought into the order in which you bring them up. Generally speaking, you should bring them up in order of importance, so that the most important and loudest parts come up first. This way you ensure a successful balance between the core elements of your track before considering the less important elements. Many mixers offer an input gain control, which allows you to adjust the volume of the input to a channel strip before any other processing occurs. This input gain control is useful for getting sounds that are far too loud or far too quiet in the ballpark, so to speak, so that the level of the faders aren't shoved off into the extreme ends of their ranges. One important topic that we have yet to address is that of headroom. It is important when you are mixing to leave a certain amount of headroom, in other words, to not allow the level of your mix to exceed a certain peak loudness. For instance, if your mix never goes louder than -5 decibels full scale, you will say that you have 5 decibels of headroom. There are two reasons to leave headroom in this manner. First, to avoid digital clipping with levels greater than 0 decibels full scale, and second, to leave some space to perform mastering or finalizing processes. How much headroom you need to leave is an open question, but in general, when working with 24-bit audio, it is better to err on the side of too much than on the side of too little. Anywhere between 3 decibels and 20 decibels of headroom should be fine. 6 decibels is a pretty good amount for music with a modest dynamic range, such as pop music or electronic dance music. For music with a wide dynamic range, you will want more headroom to leave space for any unexpectedly large peaks. In order to create a given amount of headroom, you will need to set your individual mixer tracks so that their levels are somewhat below the desired amount of headroom. If you want to leave 6 decibels of headroom, then you might set your loudest mixer tracks so that their levels do not exceed -9 decibels full scale. Of course, this is only a starting point, and depending on the nature of the interactions between your mixer tracks, it may not work for your mix. Naturally, your music will be quieter if it has a lot of headroom. Do not remove headroom because your music is too quiet. Just turn up your monitoring volume. You will want to remove most or all of the headroom before you send your mix out into the world, but now is not the time to do that. You should only do so as one of the very last steps in the mixing process. One last thing to consider when leveling is the concept of level riding. If you ride your levels, then what that means is rather than having your level faders always stay at a fixed position, they move up and down over the course of the track to shape the dynamics and the balance of the music.